Okay, yeah, we are live. Good evening, Brad Barritt. How are you, How are you, sir?
Good evening, Wells. I'm very well, buddy. How are you?
Yeah, I can't complain. I'm sure you enjoying the weather. Is it not summer close by or on
Yeah, I
the
think
horizon?
the one positive to take from this is that, COVID has come to the UK in summer, so we can go outside and we don't need to put Wellington boots on, coats and scarves and things like that. So my 5-year-old son's keeping me very entertained.
Awesome, dude. Maybe a good way to start is possibly to start with congratulations on the birth of your child. You're a braver
Thank
man
you
than
very
me to go for round two, so congratulations.
Well, it took me 5 years to decide it was a good idea again. You
Uh,
suddenly get your life back and your sleep back, and within a few weeks, you remind yourself why it took you so long. But thankfully, everything's going well. He's healthy, and mom's healthy, and big brother's actually been very, very good.
Well, maybe that's a good thing when you have that sort of gap. Your eldest son understands how to be that loving brother, and he's probably enamored and interested in this new being that's now entered your house.
Yeah, he's certainly trying. He still refuses to change nappies or do the things that would be quite helpful, but
Yeah.
he's good at least of doing menial tasks for the baby.
Well, I'll make sure to start to get Grayson to make sure he's more handy around the house. And that
That's it.
would be an exciting factor if a second child is coming.
It does, yeah. It's like a built-in nanny, you know what I mean?
Well, I suppose with COVID-19, it's obviously nice to have this family time, enforced lockdown to a certain degree. Has it been quite difficult trying to keep the family entertained and your kid entertained and homeschooling and all that?
Yeah, I mean, you look at it in the sort of the pace of life, it all just sort of blends into one. A Monday feels like a Sunday and a Sunday feels like a Wednesday. I think what's been really good is that if I look at positives in terms of spending time with both Leo and my wife and our newborn son, it's times that we've never had. I think when Leo was this age, I was in America for a couple of weeks. We were preparing for the World Cup. His first 6 months, I was probably at home like 10 to 12 nights. So already in these first 3 weeks of having my second son, we've spent more time as a family. So I think we'll look back on this hopefully in 5-10 years and think, that was actually a really special time that, we got to spend, very, very important time together as a family. But on the flip side, it can be very challenging. I'm trying to homeschool. I think in the UK, you start school a year earlier. So my eldest is in full-blown school reception. He's reading, he's writing, he's got maths to do, he's got French exercises to do. So I'm brushing up on my French. I need to give old Freddie Michalak a call for some pointers. The last time I've tried to speak French was probably to him in Durban in 2008. So it's there's a few things that make life's pace quite difficult. Doing that whilst trying to be helpful as a newborn's dad, as well as try to stay fit and try to run my business at the same time. I'm juggling a few hats.
Does this give you a newfound respect for teachers and the education system?
So. Yeah, I think the in the UK they have a Tuesday and a Thursday night where the local streets go out onto the streets and clap for the carers, and I'm a huge advocate of beyond COVID having a Saturday clap for teachers, because 3 weeks of homeschooling a 5-year-old, I have a newfound respect for the patience of teachers with young ones.
Yeah, I think I'm quite fortunate that my son is 2.5. So I mean, he's just pulling me left, right, and center where to go. He doesn't have the focus. I mean, he's got the attention span of a goldfish. So I can imagine it's quite difficult when you want them to absorb as much as they possibly can.
Yeah, and it's also when they're at home, they have all the distractions of things that they like doing. So
Yes.
He'd much rather play Lego or play on the trampoline or
Yes.
dig in his sandpit than sit here at the table and, be counting in twos for an hour long. So
Yeah.
it's challenging in many aspects, but it's been a really, really special time in many ways.
Yeah, I think that's for me the most important thing is to try and find the positive through this pandemic. I know it's quite difficult because mainstream media is in your face daily, telling you about everything that's going on in the world. But if you are trying to find that ray of sunshine, I think that keeps you motivated going forward. Um, so for me personally, it's just trying to stay positive and making sure I've got a lot of hope.
Yeah, it's quite unique, I guess, in that the whole world's going through it. It's not isolated to one industry. It's not isolated to one country. So there's very little time for, I can probably put it as a sort of self-pity. It's not a situation where you can really feel sorry for yourself, because ultimately there's people out there who are losing lives. There are people out there who are really struggling, both health-wise, but also physically, mentally. And if you're largely a healthy family, you've got a lot more positives. So trying to cling on to those and control the things that you can control during this period are crucial.
Yeah, well, I know there must be a race for the vaccine following all these different pharmaceutical companies trying to get a vaccine, I'm sure. This pandemic will probably last for a good while longer, even when we try and go back to some sort of normalcy.
Yeah, sadly so.
And then obviously rugby season got derailed for obvious reasons. How have you and the club handled this lockdown in terms of communication, keeping the players sharp, and just how has the club handled the whole COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, it's been quite challenging, I think, in that, when it first sort of sprung up, I think the first instance we heard was, one of the Six Nations games was cancelled, but the others were going ahead. And I think we're all quite nonchalant about it and thinking, we might get a few weeks off. Great, party.
Yeah.
And then, reality, I guess, set in. And now you're in a position where, quite frankly, I don't think anyone can tell you when rugby is going to resume. We all effectively are on individual training programs. I don't know if you would have read much into the sort of furlough scheme. Clubs have used that, and you aren't actually allowed to have any organized training at the club. So we're staying in contact with our sort of direct sort of S&C coaches, but again, you're limited to what you have accessible at home. I've never been one that's been too reliant on keeping up strength, so I don't need as much weights and dumbbells, etc. I lose fitness a lot quicker, so I've tried to prioritize at least remaining semi-cardiovascular fit, as opposed to having to keep the weight on and strength on. Use all sort of body weight exercises and the few little bits I have at home. Hopefully that will suffice by the time I get back. And I think all professional rugby in the UK has decided that whenever the team formalizes training again, there's a minimum 4 weeks before they're allowed to play. So we're still, over a month away from playing at any point, in my opinion.
Well, I think obviously the strength of your club and the culture you guys have formulated, I'm sure, is to keep morale up must be quite difficult. But I'm sure the culture at Saracens, I'm sure the boys will be motivated and chomping at the bit to return whenever that date is.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of more than rugby. It's your whole social sphere. It's your whole reason to get up, not just from the perspective of loving what you do, and it's actually been a huge drive in terms of your happiness and enjoyment. So I think from the club's perspective, everyone's itching to get back, not just to play rugby, but to feel part of something again. The little bits of enjoyment you get now at home with your family, but anyone who's been in a sort of competitive, happy environment, yearns to enjoy that again.
Absolutely. And now, just to get nostalgia flowing, I want to take you back to your time at the Sharks. Obviously, we've been very blessed to come up through the age groups together, and obviously, it was kind of like a fairy tale playing with you at professional level. So just
the feelings mutual.
Hey, what do you say?
Said the feelings mutual.
Feel like I'm going to break out into a poem. But obviously, I think for any KZN boy, the culmination of your goals, I suppose you never think you're going to be playing for the Sharks, let alone be playing in a professional environment in your career. You kind of hope and dream of these outcomes. And for us, it kind of just flowed that way. It happened that way, which was quite nice. And obviously, we had that understanding from schoolboy rugby. Although you did spend some time in the forwards, so I never had that experience.
That's where I toughened up.
Before you crossed over to the backs.
The dark side.
The dark side.
You know what it is? I think even apart from the amazing sort of memories of playing for your boyhood team, I think what I even more sort of look back on fondly and what a special time it was in Sharks rugby, but also South African rugby. I had the privilege of sort of going through over a few of the games in 2007, and you just look at the crowd South African rugby had. They were latter to be the world champions that year. You had 2 South African teams in the final of Super Rugby. Super Rugby at that time was the pinnacle of domestic rugby. I'd say in the latter years, European rugby has, in my opinion, surpassed that. But at that point in time, I think South African rugby was, unsurpassed. And, to be part of a team to have a home final at the Sharks, whilst it still goes down as one of my most disappointing moments in my career, I still look back on the period extremely fondly. I think, what Dick Muir did, Plum, Bashi, the whole team in terms of turning a franchise that had struggled for a few seasons on its head by using youth, by using the guys who'd been part of the core of that team for a few years, was quite phenomenal. And as I said, it was still some of the most enjoyable moments and years of rugby I've ever played.
And I think it was, just you alluded to Dick Moore, just the innovation, I think, that happened that year with a lot of youngsters being thrown into the deep end. It actually made for a brand of rugby that I think was exciting and maybe not seen in many years, especially in Durban.
I ended up playing fly half a few games, and I remember Dick vividly saying to me, literally, if you kick, I'm taking you off. So
anything could happen in that team, which was quite remarkable. It wasn't short memories for sure.
I actually saw clips of that 2007 final, and something that still is almost gobsmacking to me now, having played in the UK for so long, and it's quite pragmatic, and you play the percentages, you play the territory. The Sharks were under pressure for 5 minutes on our own goal line. We win a penalty at the scrum, and in 99% times out of 100, you take the territory and you set up, your set piece. Ron Pinar taps and goes a meter from his own goal line, and we make 70 yards upfield. And I was just like, did we do that? I can't believe that. The game's changed so much, but I think just the attitude to want to play back then was awesome.
Yeah, and you touched about, that crowd was full of energy I don't think I've ever seen in my lifetime. I remember driving from our hotel to the game. It was just mass hysteria for most parts. It was just like you had to pinch yourself to actually believe you were in that current situation. So Look, yeah,
It was.
it didn't
I
go our
still,
way.
I still, no, I still don't have the bottle to watch it from start to finish again. But I had to sit through a Sky Sports sort of segment the other day where they have an ongoing, similar to what we're doing now, called The One That Got Away. And I believe they did Sean Fitzpatrick the week before about the 95 World Cup final.
Oh, wow.
And I got the supreme privilege of talking through the really vivid memories of losing that day. But again, what a phenomenal season it was. I guess what I've learned since then, I've luckily in the latter part of my career been on the right side of a final so many times. And whether you win or lose, the feeling disappears. I think you win a game, you win a final, within 2 days of partying, ultimately you got to get back to what you do, and you start from scratch, you start again, you start to rebuild. And I think you learn to appreciate it's more about the journey that you got there than the end bit. So I think in my old age, I've come to appreciate that year more and more, because the journey of getting there was so special. We had such fun doing it. It was such a committed group of players. I still have such respect for all the senior guys in the team that year, the likes of Dion, John, BJ, Uckers. You think of AJ, Albert van den Berg, you had Johan Muller, Percy, Butchie, Percy, guys who were at the top of their game, but they still treated you and I and JP and the youngsters in the team like we were equals, and they were so amazing in terms of my growth. A guy like Craig Davidson the year before was my first. He was my first roommate on tour, and he pulled me into the casino first night. So, I just look back on those memories as really fond ones, and I hope I've been able to be a similar senior players to what a lot of those guys were to me as a young kid.
Yeah, I think it's surreal in many ways. I think it was my grade 11 work experience, and Richard Diaga recognized that I could work there for 2 weeks, and basically I was sorting out papers in the office and giving the players their mail in locker rooms, and it was a really fascinating place to be in front of. And I remember being lost in the corridor or something, and AJ Fenter just pulling me aside and saying, "Listen, don't be so cautious. You can go in there and do what you need to do." Now I'm sitting there like a 6-year-old, shy and introverted. And I mean, 2 years later, you get to play with these amazing, experienced guys that contributed so much, not only to the Sharks, but to SA Rugby.
Yeah, no, it was a special time.
And then, in terms of what you've experienced, obviously you've played Southern Hemisphere Rugby, you've played some internationals here, also in South Africa, against South Africa. What are the key differences to you in terms of maybe how the game's evolved from Southern Hemisphere to Northern Hemisphere, because you were fortunate enough to dip your feet in both waters?
I think what becomes quite apparent in English rugby and the Premiership in perspective is that there's always the threat of relegation.
Okay.
So teams have to play a lot more sort of pragmatically, because the percentages of winning are so fine.
Yeah.
Again, if you're a top 4 team, you're pushing to make the playoffs. If you're a top 6 team, you're pushing to make Europe. And then if you're a bottom 3 team, you're trying to save your job effectively by staying in the Premiership. So
yeah.
I probably feel that I played more sort of tight squeeze games in one season in Europe than I played 3 seasons in Super Rugby. You look at some of the scores that used to happen in Super Rugby. I vividly remember us playing against the Reds in Queens, being like 60-odd 12.
Yeah.
And other than in the real summertime here in the UK, you just don't get scores like that. But on the flip side, I think the attritional rates of games in the UK are really demanding, especially for forwards. I think set piece is so pivotal to the game.
Yeah.
The mauling and the fine detail that goes into the game. So the amount of structure that's played is far beyond anything I ever remember for Sharks.
Yeah.
You know, the structure that goes into the kicking game, the structure that goes into your exit strategy out your own half. There's so many different sort of factors that are sort of ingrained into the ethos of a team. So, and what you'll find, especially in the English Premiership, is all the teams that have been successful are the ones who built on a foundation of know what they're about, and teams are the most organized. So I think, you know, a huge part of the success at Saracens had been that there'd been a group of people, a core team that understood each other so well and were able to stick together for so long, and almost knew secondhand in terms of the exit strategy. The defense sort of worked hand in hand with that, but the attack was sort of laid on as players developed and as players became more comfortable with playing each other.
Yeah. And obviously, you've been the captain there, I don't know how many years. It feels like forever and eternity.
5 years.
Is there any sort of leadership advice? I mean, we have a lot of young viewers that will be tuning in to see this video. Is there anyone that you molded your leadership philosophy on?
It's probably the complete opposite. My sort of strategy to sort of leadership is try be the most credible version of yourself. I think in leadership, there's nothing worse than something that's not credible. So for me, it's about being the best captain that Brad Barritt can be, and not trying to mold yourself and be someone that you're not. Because I guess you get various sort of captains, you know, some are very loud, some are very motivating, but then you also get the types who do it by actions and do it by leading from the front. But ultimately, I think my sort of leadership style was, I'd learnt off some great leaders. You know, you think of John at the Sharks, Steve Borthwick at Saracens in England was a fantastic captain too. And I'm neither like either one of them. I think you've got to find your own style. But then also for me, I was very much about empowering the people around me. So I didn't want to be a leader that people didn't want to suggest things to, that people didn't want to contribute. And I just felt that, you know, we'd be a lot stronger by empowering the people around me. And ultimately, there's always going to be someone in the team that knows something about something a little bit better than I. So, you know, our 10's going to know about the kicking game a lot better than me. The scrum is going to be run by the scrum leader. The lineouts I'll never have as great understanding as our locks do. So for me, it was about finding my own individual style, being credible that people want to believe in, but then also empowering the great players I had alongside me. And, you know, as soon as you have ownership in a team and you have people who take charge and who take power, you have a team that becomes, you know, self-reliant and almost runs itself.
And that obviously helps you when match day comes. You can lean on different people within the team, and you obviously don't feel that workload, that pressure, that stress is solely on your shoulders. And I think, carry on, Brad.
Oh, no. So we also sort of benefited by having a core group of players together for a considerable amount of time. You know, I think within that sort of Saracens leadership group in maybe the last 3 or 4 years, you've got, you know, 5 to 6 guys who've been there 7, 8 years. And those experiences are just really sort of intangible in terms of a leadership group. You got guys who've experienced high highs, you got guys who experienced low lows. And there's never been a situation that we couldn't draw back on some of those experiences we'd faced faced previously that couldn't help us get through another tight squeeze.
Yeah, and I'm sure you in essence it becomes a family environment and a culture based on safety, because you obviously don't want your players playing in fear. You want them to express themselves. You want them to air their opinions or perspectives on different scenarios.
Yeah,
And I think
that was.
you being approachable and allowing them to learn from you, and also you learning from them, gives them a great deal of confidence.
Yeah, it's having that element of everyone feeling respected,
Mm.
but on the flip side, you earn the respect by your work rate and your work ethic, really.
Mm.
So nothing necessarily was handed to you. You're not just going to come in and be given a free rein to do what you want. I think it's respect earned over a period of time that guys count on you, they rely on you, but then more importantly, trust you when the going got tough. And we had a really difficult period in 2014. We lost a European Cup final and a Premiership Cup final in consecutive weeks. So you think of your 2007 experience, think of having to play the next week and losing again.
Mm.
And that was like a huge sort of foundation for what the team was spurred on to do in the latter years, is that they came up with the slogan of pounding the rock, in terms of a stone cutter who strikes a rock 999 times
Mm.
without even showing a mark, but on that 1,000th strike, the rock shatters into two. And
Mm.
it just gave us a sort of focus just to keep going, making sure that everything that you do day to day is being counted and is being measured, even though you might not see the results soon on. Just keep going and keeping on task. And I
Mm.
firmly believe that experience in 2014 is what spurred the team on to the success in the latter years of 3 European trophies since then, and I think 4 premierships since then.
Mm. So maybe that's a good segue. You've obviously had a very long career and a very accomplished career. Is there any moments in your career that stand out, or
For good or bad?
up to you how you want to, what you want to share?
Um, memorable moments, I guess. The first premiership win for Saracens in 2011 was really special. I think we were largely underdogs the whole season. My first season at Saracens, I think we finished 8th in the premiership, and lost a load of key players that summer. Brendan Fenter joined. I think there were 23 transfers that summer, and I think we were pitted to be the following season potentially relegation sort of strugglers. And what surmounted that season was we got to the final, we lost to Leicester in the last minute, and again, people probably thought they've overachieved, how they're going to bounce back the next year. We bounced back and sort of won the premiership against the odds the year after. So in terms of that group of players, that core group that had been there, I think we only had one international in the team at that point. So it very much was a team ethos, and about the guys who'd been there a long period of time. The other sort of big moment at Saracens would have been winning the first European trophy in 2016. We'd qualified in 2009. We'd built up our pedigree. We'd made the European quarterfinals in 2010, semi-final 2011, final in 2014, and had lost to Toulon quite disappointingly away in Cardiff, and to eventually cross that hurdle of becoming European Cup champions was a huge moment for the whole club, and it probably put Saracens really on the map in world club rugby. Other obviously key moments, first cap for England, beating the All Blacks at Twickenham with England was a great memory. I guess your first professional game for me, for the Sharks. I almost got yellow carded in the first minute of being on.
Yeah.
If I had been in 2020, it probably would have been a red card. So I was very lucky to have done that in that day and age. Yeah, and I think, as I spoke about those fond memories from 2007, even though the cherry on the top of the cake wasn't there, there were still some fantastic memories of playing for your home team and experiencing a full Kings Park, which I don't think they've ever seen since.
Yeah, and obviously you've played in many hostile environments. Is there any places you absolutely love to play, or stadiums you love to play in, and obviously vice versa? Any places around the world that you actually despise going there?
So within the sort of international sphere, I obviously love playing at Twickenham.
Yeah.
But playing at the Aviva Stadium in Ireland was also an incredible experience. Also was a sort of happy hunting ground. Was part of an England team that beat Ireland away in 2013. I played there twice with Saracens. We beat Munster in the semi-final in 2017. Other great sort of stadiums that I've enjoyed. Not that I've been very successful at it, but the Stade Marcel Michelin in Clermont, I think must rank as possibly the most electric and partisan crowd in France. Incredible atmosphere to play there.
Yeah.
But sadly never won. The other great grounds, as I said, playing at Kings Park in those days where it used to be sold out was sort of a boyhood dream in many ways. And then to have played there with England in 2012 was also quite a surreal moment. I also had my eyeball poked out after 30 minutes and was rushed off to hospital to not play again. So,
well, luckily you're the toughest person I've ever met in my life. I think I was at that game actually, and I thought this would happen to Brad now.
I know
You would get the nastiest injury that could present itself.
Yeah, and ironically enough, it was someone from my own team. I was predicting either Bucky's or one of the Springbok forwards to do it to me, not one of my own teammates.
Fair enough. And any hostile environments, any places you don't enjoy particularly traveling to, or you kind of just take it as it is?
I wouldn't say I've always quite enjoyed the hostility of an atmosphere because rugby is very different to football. It's not hostility where you feel like you're going to get stabbed. It's more hostility from a point of they support their team and they're behind their team and there's a bit of banter really.
And you can derive energy from that.
Yeah, I'll never forget my first cap for England. In the team bus and all the antics that go on at Murrayfield. You got men in kilts lining the drive-in and they're all flashing you as you drive by. They intentionally put like a brass band in front of the team coach, so it takes you 45 minutes from the front gate to get to where you need to be. That was also, a really cool experience.
Yeah.
And off the top of my head, playing in New Zealand is always pretty tough.
Yeah.
I think we had a few successes there with the Sharks in 2007. Quite a crazy one. I don't think they've ever played there since. I remember you would have played in 2007 where we played in a little town just out Christchurch. I'm trying to remember what it was called.
No, I can't remember the name myself, but
yeah, it was really weird. You were like a local club around and you're playing against sort of All Black legends, and that was a pretty cool experience too.
Yeah, it was almost like the stigma attached to playing in New Zealand at that time was it was almost elusive to pick up a victory.
Yeah, it was.
But I think we surprised ourselves. It was a year first, I think, in many aspects. So
the Chiefs ground in Hamilton was pretty cool. They had the bloke with the chainsaw on top of the stand, which was always quite entertaining.
I don't know who thinks of these PR stunts. Let's just give someone a chainsaw some bell ringing in the background. This could be pretty cool.
Well, I mean, the Sharks always had the daunting prospect of the guys doing push-ups. I mean, that really scared the daylights out of people, didn't it?
Struck fear into the hearts of
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've been a little different, the Banana Boys. We've come a long way.
Yeah, coming on.
And then maybe a good way to kind of finish, we could maybe talk about your company, Tiki Tonga, and maybe also pair that with the culture at Saracens and what makes them unique. And then maybe talk about your business and how it came to fruition.
Yeah, sure. I think I did sort of tertiary education in South Africa. And then when I joined Saracens, I embarked on a sort of an MSc Masters in Business between 2009 and eventually got the degree in 2017. So what should have been a 2-year Masters was stretched out over a course of 7 years. And there were very dark moments throughout that, thinking I'm never going to get this done. I don't have the willpower. I don't have any sort of reason to do it. But I probably look back on it really proudly that I eventually got it done. How, I don't know, but somehow I was able to stick in there. And around that sort of time, I'd debated whether I should do some really intensive work experience or, you know, some business shadowing. And then I probably thought to myself, you know, why not try do something on your own? A teammate of ours, Alistair Hargreaves, and a good friend of mine, Chris Wiles, had launched their beer brewery probably 18 months to 2 years before that. And, you know, I'd seen their business flourish. I'd seen them sort of grow as people. And you can see the enjoyment they got from doing something they were passionate about. And probably since I moved to the UK, coffee had been a huge interest and passion for me. I'd lived in London for 8-9 years, and all days off were either spent going to, you know, small markets or coffee shops or small micro roasteries, things like that. And I was probably fed up of seeing coffee pitched as a hipster product.
Yeah.
Because it was so sort of mainstream, and in terms of the rugby, the way in which people interacted was all through coffee. So I was probably inspired by the story of, you know, sport's such a good connector of people, but more importantly, I think coffee is too. So we came up with this brand that's inspired by sport, and similar to sport, it strives to bring people together off the field. And it all started from there. I met a guy at Saracens who'd been in the industry about 35 years. He was largely in the machinery side. We spoke about different sort of concepts, and eventually it sort of came to fruition when I had a shoulder up. And I don't know if you've come out of a few operations, you are pumped full of drugs that make you send out very obscure messages. And one of them was to this guy, sort of saying, oh, let's do it. And it all sort of came from there.
Okay. So morphine.
And what's been great is that, you know, to date, it's now 3.5 years old. You know, we've shipped coffee to, I think, around 70 countries around the world. We have stores in South Africa now. We're a title sponsor with Tottenham Hotspurs, with Saracens, the Tour of Britain cycling. We're on Ocado, which is the biggest online supermarket in the UK. We're on Amazon. You know, during COVID, we've seen our online sales sort of soar. We've partnered with Marriott Hotels. We've had some really cool things happen to us as quite a young business. But I guess first and foremost, I think the reason why maybe it's been a relative success is because it's never felt like a day of work. And I always sort of stuck to the stigma of, you know, I never set out to play rugby for any financial gain. It was because it was my passion. And beyond rugby, I wanted to find something that I enjoy doing, and that by the fact that you enjoy it, you're going to work harder at it. And the harder you work, the higher percentage your chances of being successful. So again, it's been a great learning curve. There's been highs and lows and lessons learned along the way. But the whole experience, I think, what has emerged is I've found a great passion and something that I can really enjoy beyond rugby.
I suppose it's important to have that balance, and I suppose for you it's a mental refresher when you are aware of the game, you can apply your mind to different creative outlets. And I'm sure in the coffee business, your mind is constantly thinking about new innovative ways of where you can push this brand and where do you go next. I suppose the opportunities are endless.
Yeah, I mean, I think coffee sales grow year on year worldwide, and there's been some great collaborations we've done during the Rugby World Cup. We partnered with Guinness, and we created a Tiki Tonga Guinness 232 brew, which was a sort of a darker roast that has like aromas, Guinness-like flavor profiles. And that's a product that, as I said, just captured the imagination of people worldwide. We were inundated with requests to send it abroad, and we were by no means in the position to be able to offer that functioning. So as a result of that, we've become a lot more tech savvy. We've become a lot more agile in terms of how the business functions. Actually, next week, which is quite exciting, we've done a unique product for Tottenham Hotspur. They'll be launching what's called the White Heart Blend, which is a celebration of players who've represented Tottenham Hotspurs both past and present. So, they've had some fantastic Brazilian footballers, some world-class Colombian players, and a few Kenyan players. So it's merging all those sort of interests to create a product that identifies with its captive market.
Well, I'm going to make sure to look out for that because my brother is an ardent Tottenham Hotspur fan. Obviously,
it'll be going live on the
and I
website
know
next
you're an
week.
Arsenal fan. Well, now I suppose you've had to go across to Tottenham to a certain degree.
100%.
So yeah, I look forward to seeing where the company goes next. It must be an exciting time for you, especially with, irrespective of the pandemic at the moment. It's probably given you more time to think and reflect and probably plan for the future a little bit.
Yeah, I think in terms of having that sort of reason to sort of think and reason to drive towards, I think, the sporting world's at a standstill now. Whilst you can train, as you and I know, you can't train 24/7 at home. You can do the bits that you've got available to you, but you still need to become stimulated. And, rugby is not just about the physical training, it's about the process in which you analyze an opposition, you then debrief, you work out what's done well, what you can do, and it's the whole strategy, the game of chess behind the physical attributes. And that's the huge bit I think that everyone misses, is having a goal on a Monday and having a conclusion on a Saturday or Sunday. So the coffee focus has allowed me to become a lot more driven in that capacity.
And then one more thing, I think it would be a good way to close is possibly maybe giving some advice to our young students that might be watching the video. Is there anything that, any pearls of wisdom that have helped you along the way in your career that you can offer to them?
Probably, from the point of only do something that you want to do. I think, especially in professional rugby, if it's not something that you love, ultimately you're going to lose love for it and fall out of love for it, and there'll be someone who wants to do it that much more than you. So I guess whatever you want to do in life, find your passion, find your drive, and then work as hard as you have in any sort of sphere of your life, whether you want to go into the performing arts or be an artist or a skateboarder. Whatever you do, find a passion, but then work at it as hard as you can for as long as you can. And success might not happen overnight. It's the guys who are the most persistent and the guys who don't take no for an answer that ultimately prevail. I guess, I don't know if you would have watched most recently, which has been quite inspiring. It's The Last Dance, about Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. And,
beautiful.
I assumed watching that Michael Jordan was some sort of childhood prodigy, and it was actually quite the contrary. They said in high school he was, your average sort of player, and they never would have predicted him to become what he is today. And I think a lot can be said. Guys at school who are phenomenal players, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be the top line pros, and vice versa. Guys who might not get recognized earlier on, it's their persistence and their attitude to train and to get better, and having a relentless sort of attitude and positivity to what they do. It sees them succeed. So it's probably a lesson to everyone out there, is that you're never the finished article. I think whatever you do in life, always look to get better and keep striding on.
Thanks, Brad. I just want to say, yeah, can you hear me? I just want to say thank you very much for allowing me to have this conversation with you. I know it's
for you, anything, buddy.
I know it's been very long, and obviously I wish you all the best. I think you one of the best leaders I've seen, not just from a rugby point of view, but you continuously try and promote positivity, and it's a reflection of how your career has been. So for me, I hope you play another 10, 15 years, so we can continue to watch you shine. But yeah, thank you very much for what you've contributed to the game as a leader, as a rugby player, and most importantly as a person. And I wish you
only a pleasure, buddy, and I look forward to catching up for a few cold ones soon.
Well, let's stick to the coffee. I need to have a
cold brew
coffee. All right, cheers, bud.
Take care, bud. Cheers, bye.